So we are live now, folks. Welcome to another weekly live stream with yours truly, Dr. Sarah Webb of Colorism Healing. Today's topic, I'm really excited. It's about what happens when dark-skinned people internalize colorism. So if you've seen my posts on social media from Sunday, we're going to be talking about all the ways that internalized colorism manifests in the lives of dark-skinned people around the world. As usual, before we jump into that, I'd like to say hello to people as you join. Be sure to introduce yourself, wave, say hello. And I also have a couple of announcements. Welcome, Sienna. Welcome, JB. And let's see. Hello to my Facebook watcher. So as you all know, I say it every week, we are in the middle of the Colorism Healing Writing Contest that is going through April 30th. And we accept all types of writing, poetry, prose, essays, short stories, fiction, nonfiction. And we are halfway through. Yeah, so we're halfway through the submission process, right? Which is really exciting. Also, happy Women's History Month, in particular, Black Women's History Month. Woohoo! And in terms of the Colorism Healing Writing Contest, I want to remind you all that you can show financial support by becoming a member on Patreon. There are 3 different tiers, $3, $5, and $7. And if you don't want to do a monthly membership, then you can submit a one-time donation to Colorism Healing on Cash App or Venmo, or at sarah@colorismhealing.com on PayPal. Hi, Nikki B. Yes, thank you for addressing this. Nikki B is saying on Facebook, I am really thrilled to dig in. I talk about colorism every week, and I'm not sure I've spent a week just talking about how dark-skinned people in particular perpetuate colorism, within ourselves, because we have accepted, are bought into the system that says lighter is better. A lot of times it's a coping mechanism, right? So it's not like dark-skinned people are necessarily wanting to buy into that system, but we find ourselves caught up in it. And so we are trying our best to navigate it with as little backlash as possible. And so some of these things that we're going to talk about are a result of that. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. I see a lot of people joining on Instagram. Sienna says, hi, how are you today? I'm doing great today. I've been so excited because we're having like multiple days of sunshine in the Midwest. Woo, I love sunshine. And the weather's getting a little warmer. We're like in the 40s and 50s. So I'm liking it. I'm in a good mood. And this week we also have like non-instructional days for our campus. They did spring break a little different, so I didn't have to teach this week. So I'm like real chill. I'm like, this is a good week. I've been practicing for my TED Talk. I have a TED Talk coming up for anyone who hasn't heard that announcement yet on March 20th. They will have a live stream link available. So if anyone wants to tune in live, I'll be sharing the link as soon as I can. And of course, as I'm going through some of my points on internalized colorism, particularly for dark-skinned people, I accept questions and I accept comments, and I always make time to read the comments out loud on the live so that we have them saved. But I broke it down into 6 different categories in terms of how colorism manifests amongst dark-skinned people who have internalized it, or as I said at the beginning, who find themselves trying to cope within a colorist system. And so I'll briefly name the 6 categories, and then I'll go back and give specific examples for each one. So the first one is dating choices and marriage partners, right? And a lot of times we see people making their choice of partners or mates based on their internalized beliefs about colorism. I'm not speaking about dark-skinned people specifically. Another one is believing that they are too dark for something, right? And so a lot of people have their own examples of this, right? Being too dark to, you fill in the blank. The third category is disproportionate praise or admiration for lighter skinned people, right? So that internalized colorism is a really deep one where you come to believe also that light skin is prettier or more attractive. And then a fourth a fourth category is then discriminating against other dark-skinned people. And I have a particularly, painful, triggering example that I'll share when I come back around to that. And then on the flip side of that, on the flip side of discriminating against dark-skinned people, there's also acts of favoritism towards light-skinned people. So the example I have is an example of how those two things work in tandem. And then the sixth one, I think I'm on number 6, is compensating, feeling like you need to compensate for being darker skinned. I feel like you need to compensate for the fact that there is dark skinned bias. And that comes along with feeling like you need to work harder to prove yourself. And I have personal examples of all this stuff. So we'll dive right in. And I know some of you left in the comments what your examples were. So if you haven't seen the comments on my Instagram post in particular, go back to the original post from Sunday, because some people were sharing really insightful testimonies and experiences that they've had as well. But in terms of the choice of partners for dark-skinned people, this is one of the most common ones, one of the most obvious ones, one of the ones that we see discussed in the media most often is I need a light-skinned partner, or I need a non-black partner, right? So that my children come out lighter. And so you'll hear a lot of dark-skinned people say things like, well, I don't want my children to have to go through what I went through, or I don't want my children to have to suffer the way I did. And so I'm going to purposely try to have lighter skinned kids so that they have better chances than I did, right? And so again, internalized colorism isn't just always about hating dark skin necessarily, but I think especially in previous generations, people really did believe that their children would be better off if they had lighter skinned. And they had just cause to believe that. They had valid reasons to believe that, right? But then there's also the fetishization of light skin, light eyes, mixed or biracial features, right? That plays into that too. So I think we see that most often in the younger generations, where it's less about survival and less about having better outcomes for your children, and more so just that internalized white supremacy that, oh, my children are going to be prettier or better in general because they are mixed or because they are lighter skinned, right? And so I think we see that be pretty rampant amongst people of color in general. And in Latin America, for example, there's blanqueamiento la raza, which is bettering the race or whitening the race, I think, right? Blanqueamiento is whitening the race, and then mejorando la raza is bettering the race. So there are these cultural beliefs that have existed for generations, particularly amongst indigenous cultures around the world and the African diaspora, that the better choice is to have lighter skinned babies and to try to, over time, over generations, distance yourself from your Black or indigenous ancestry. Hi from Vienna. Welcome. I am Shanda Rule. Just going through, making sure I'm not missing anyone saying hello. I'm probably waving at people late. You might have already dropped off, but if you see the wave, hopefully. And I think the other side of that is parents advising their children to do the same thing. So in terms of their personal choice, I actually saw a TikTok where a young dark-skinned woman overheard her mother talking to a fellow colorist friend, explaining why she married an Indian man because she wanted her children to have lighter skin. And so the dark-skinned child heard this and was really hurt by it, right? And was saying, how could you say that? And you didn't know I was overhearing you, but I did. And so parents themselves make that choice, but then they instill that mentality into the next generation. They tell their sons, they tell their daughters, don't bring home a Black boyfriend or girlfriend, or husband or wife, right? Don't bring home, somebody too dark. Don't bring home XYZ, right? We don't want to see that here. Or even in terms of grandchildren, like I want, mixed grandchildren. I've heard stories about people saying that as well. Oh my gosh, I'm missing the Facebook comments. Nikki B says, you are so awesome. Your work is so important. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nikki, for being here. Vincent says, yes, I've seen this with a few cousins on my dad's side and in my immediate family. Bobby Jean Simmons says, this is so prevalent, sad to say. Absolutely, it is extremely prevalent. And we're going to talk about solutions, right? We're going to talk about the answer to some of this stuff. So let me keep going. The second category I mentioned was believing that we're too dark to do something, or saying one of the most common ones is, I'm too dark to wear loud colors. I heard that a lot more often growing up, like, oh, I can't wear yellow. Or, I think one of the comments on the post was, I am still afraid to wear black. And it's interesting because I've been wearing black all fall and winter. But people being afraid to wear certain colors. And red lipstick is one of the common ones that we hear a lot. Dark-skinned women saying they're afraid to wear red lipstick. Or I'm too dark to be out in the sun for too long. Like, I don't want to get any darker. I don't want to get any blacker. I'm already black enough, so I need to stay in the shade. Or I'm too dark to wear my natural hair, right? Or I'm too dark to fill in the blank. Again, for each person, it's going to be different. Knit Stitches and Blocks says, I love listening to you. It is fascinating. Thank you. I'm a Gemini, so I love to talk. And I just like to talk about colorism a lot in particular. And so I think the same rule applies, is that it's not, internalized colorism is not just I'm too dark to do something, but it's also you're too dark to do that, right? If I don't feel comfortable wearing red lipstick as a dark-skinned woman, I'm going to judge you, dark-skinned woman, for wearing red lipstick. And so we'll see, like, a lot of my experiences with colorism were judgments or policing from other dark-skinned people who were like, we don't do that as dark-skinned people. How dare you wear yellow? Like, no, you're too dark for that. And I'll say that with that too, I've heard stories about, well, I'm dark, but at least I'm not as dark as you, right? So amongst people who are dark, there's still this like jockeying to see, well, I'm a little less dark. I'm not quite as black as you, thank God I'm not that dark or too black, right? So I think there's that internalized colorism. So often we talk about society in general, or we talk about light-skinned people, but a lot of our colorism experiences come from other people who are the same shade as us. And I know people can relate. I know people relate to that. I am Shanda Rule says, to succeed at without overcompensating with. Yes. Oh, I'm getting to that overcompensating piece because, the next category that I mentioned was disproportionate praise and adoration of light skin, mixed race features, or even just, non-black features or European features. And I remember being at like social functions and social gatherings and being stung by how overboard, it would seem like really overboard, like the adoration and just like the fawning over the light-skinned person, or just fawning over the mixed race person. And these were adult people, like adults doing this. And it's like, okay, like it's enough to just give a compliment. Oh, you look really nice. I love your hair. Oh, you look so cute. You look cute. I like your outfit, right? But like people would go on and on and on for like several minutes at a time. And it was obvious that the overly praising and fawning over the light-skinned person was in stark contrast to ignoring the dark-skinned person, the dark-skinned people in the room, right? So there could be 10 beautiful dark-skinned people in the room, and none of them are being complimented, right? None of them are getting, props for rocking a new hairdo or, rocking cute earrings. But the one light-skinned person in the room, or the one biracial person, even the one non-black person in the room, all of a sudden it's like a love fest, and everybody's just like, oh my gosh, you are so pretty. And, and it's okay to tell people they're pretty, but if you've witnessed it, it feels different. It feels kind of icky, actually. It feels a little awkward and weird. It goes above just a nice, pleasant, friendly compliment, Nikki B is saying, yes, dark-skinned women love to police other dark-skinned women. It's internalized misogyny war also. they only do it to dark women and girls. 100%. Yeah, because they don't police dark-skinned men in the same way, right, Nikki? Yeah, the Black community, babies, light women and girls, they create narcs. I missed some comments on Instagram. Okay, so I've heard you're good looking for a dark-skinned girl. Yes. Okay, so Knit Stitches and Blocks is saying that when dark-skinned women are complimented, it's with a caveat, right? It's with like, it's undermined a little bit. It becomes a backhanded compliment. They can't just compliment you outright. It has to say, oh, you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl, right? And that, again, in contrast to the overboard, like people really go overboard sometimes with the way they fawn over lighter skinned folks. Jindal Crutch says, we see this in schools too. Teachers fawning over lighter skinned students' features. Even darker skinned teachers ignoring the darker skinned students. That is so true, Jindal Crutch. Like yes, I see it too. And we don't call it out enough. Somebody in the comments said that it's so normalized that people don't notice it maybe, or maybe they just think it's normal. But I'm like, as I'm talking with y'all, it's a lot of people in schools. It's so obvious, right? Because you'll have a classroom, you'll go have a predominantly Black school, for example, and there might be like 1 or 2 students in the classroom who are mixed race. And it's so obvious that the teachers play favorites, that they favor those children over the other dozen or so dark-skinned kids in the class. And this is despite actual academic performance, despite actual kindness and student neighborly behavior, right? And so I'll jump right into that. So it goes hand in hand with acts of favoritism, right? And so it's not just the compliments or the verbal praise, but this is where the story comes in, because you actually mistreat people. You can actually start to abuse other dark-skinned people, and actually give tangible rewards, tangible consequences to lighter skinned people. So for me, I remember having a dark skinned babysitter named Miss Gloria, and yes, I'm calling her name out. She's probably, I don't know where she is at this point in the world, but she was darker skinned, and she really hated me and my brother who were darker skinned, right? And my sister would go there as well, but she was lighter skinned, and so she didn't really get as much of the hatred. But I remember Miss Gloria also had a light skinned granddaughter, and we would be sitting at the table eating breakfast before going to school. And Miss Gloria, I felt she would intentionally put a lot of food on my plate. So I was like maybe 5 or 6. And so she would give me the same amount of food as like my older brother, who's 5 years older than me. So he was probably like 9 or 10. And she would say, you have to eat all the food on your plate before you can have any juice, before you can drink any juice. Like I could not take a sip of my juice until every crumb of food, of breakfast food, was eaten off my plate. And I was full. Like she's trying to force feed me, right? As a dark-skinned child. And I couldn't, and I'm sitting here, not only am I like stuffed and like trying to take in like dry grits, but I can't get anything to drink. But across the table from me, so she would purposely sit her light-skinned granddaughter across the table from me. And she did not give her the same conditions. She did not have the same restrictions. So her granddaughter would take a bite, and then she'd be drinking her juice, and then she'd ask for more juice, right? So me, the dark-skinned child, sitting here like thirsty as heck, okay? Watching a light-skinned child be able to drink all the juice she wants until her heart's content. And so that's a very clear example from my personal experience of how like physical mistreatment of someone because they're dark skinned, and like the physical tangible favoritism of someone else because they're lighter skinned. JB says, Dr. Webb, you are so powerful. Jandel Crutch says, OMG, I remember that so vividly, sis. Yeah. So Janelle Crutch is my sister. She was there to witness it. Nikki B says, white teachers over compliment biracial children. Yeah, white teachers can be colorist as well. White teachers also favor biracial, light-skinned, or ambiguously phenotypical people. Black folk over compliment light children. They are mean to dark-skinned students. I would check them on their texturism, featureism, and colorism and anti-blackness. It's frustrating. Yes. So any caregivers who are watching this, either live or on recording, any school teachers, any educators, any parents, any grandparents, anyone who cares about dark-skinned children in particular, you need to be vigilant about the people who are in charge of them, whether it's their teachers at school, if it's a babysitter, if it's another relative, if it's, anyone who you're giving responsibility to your children for. You have to vet them really thoroughly, like observe them, teach your children what to say if they are experiencing something like that. Talk to your children, question them about, things that are going on with teachers and at school or, at daycare centers. I experienced colorism at the daycare center. Like, bruh, these people traumatize dark-skinned children. It's like not just about, oh, you're mad because you weren't cute. Like, I feel like what Miss Gloria did to me was physical abuse, force feeding a child, denying them hydration, basically, So yeah, parents, don't be ashamed to take your child out of a class or out of a school or out of a daycare center if you find out or catch wind that there's colorism involved. Mellow and Chill says, I've had that happen as well. My white stepmother would sneak presents that were sent to me in the mail from my mom and give them to my stepsister. Wow. I was like 7 or 8 and remember like yesterday. Yeah, and that stuff sticks with you, right? Like for me to be like 5 or 6 and remember that so vividly, I remember when I first thought about it, I was writing my dissertation on colorism and the memory just came it hit me like a Mack truck and I just started crying and it was so sudden that I also started laughing at the same time. I was like that, crying and laughing emoji. But those memories, yeah, when we talk about colorism healing, like that's the kind of stuff from childhood that we have to heal, So I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. And then within your own household too, like that makes it even worse because at least the babysitter, I knew I was going to be gone. I knew once I got on the bus to go to school, I was done with her, right? But for it to be happening in your own home is that much worse. JB said it's sad, but epidemic. So sorry you had to go through that. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I spent a lot of time on that one. The other one, so that was two wrapped into one. So discriminating against darker skinned folks or mistreating them while playing favoritism and showing acts of favor towards lighter skinned folks. The last one I want to talk about too, because I can remember when I realized that I was doing this, but it's feeling like you have to compensate for people's bias against dark skin. Are feeling like you have to work harder, kind of hustle to prove that you're just as worthy as other people. And I realized that my subconscious programming, my subconscious narrative was that, well, they're not going to pay attention to me because of how I look. Like, I'm not one of those girls that'll just get attention just because. Like, so I have to be the smart one. Right? Or I have to run faster than everybody else. Or I have to be more interesting. I have to be more interesting, right? I have to be wittier or funnier or, more skilled in some way or nicer and all these different things because my subconscious belief. And again, I didn't know that until I started digging deeper into my colorism healing work that colorism was a big factor in terms of why I felt that way. And I know some people, one of the comments was that compensating in terms of trying to downplay negative stereotypes. So if you're a dark-skinned woman, you try even harder to be soft-spoken because you don't want people to think you're angry or mad or have a bad attitude. Or if you're a dark-skinned woman, trying harder to be presentable. Right? Like you have the more of an onus of that respectability politics thing, right? So because I'm dark skinned, I have to be really, really demure. I have to be really well dressed. Because I'm dark skinned, I have to have, the best wig I could possibly afford. because people aren't going to be able to look past that dark skin, and give me a fair shot. A Pretty Mind says, I could write endless books on my experiences with colorism. It's the devaluing of my humanity for me. Yeah. So maybe you should write that book. We will support it. We will support it. I Am Chandarul says, nice. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the compensating one, a lot of dark-skinned women. So I was on a panel. Let me give this as an example. I was on a panel, and I was the only dark-skinned woman. Again, so we can talk about the makeup of panels about colorism, right? I think there were 4 women on the panel, and I was the only dark-skinned woman on a panel about colorism. Just let that sink in, okay? But the other light-skinned women were saying, I have to work twice as hard to prove that I deserve this position. Or, sometimes I work really hard and people think I got it just because I'm light-skinned, right? And so, hey, how are you? So my response was, 1, I work just as hard and I still don't get the position. So I understand like a light-skinned woman complaining that as hard as she works, people assume she only got the job because she's light-skinned. But my response is that as hard as I work, I didn't get the job. Or as hard as I work, I didn't get picked for the team. Or as hard as I work, I didn't do X, Y, Z. And so that's what privilege is. Privilege does not mean that you did not work hard. It means that if you were dark-skinned, your hard work still might not have paid off. Privilege does not mean you aren't talented. Privilege means that if you were dark-skinned, people probably still would not have acknowledged your talent, right? And then there's the other thing too. So some of the light-skinned women on the panel were saying, yeah, because I got the position I got a job and I felt like I was really overqualified for it. Like she had felt like she had been allowed into spaces that she was underqualified for, that she did not really, maybe wasn't the most qualified. And so I said, as a dark-skinned woman, I've never felt that way. As a dark-skinned woman, I always feel overqualified. I always feel overqualified for my positions, right? And there's, people understand it in terms of race. If you see a Black person rising to a position of prominence in their fields or, achieving any kind of accolades, that they have worked harder, that they are very, very qualified in order to overcome the implicit bias of racism. And so we can say the same thing with colorism, right? For me to have overcome things like implicit bias and colorism, I'm qualified for whatever position you see me in. Trust me, they're not letting they're not letting incompetent dark-skinned people in the room. They're just not. They can let incompetent Karens in the room all day. They can let incompetent Brians and Dans in the room all day. But if you see a dark-skinned person, especially a dark-skinned woman in any room, at any table, you better believe she is the most qualified one at that table. All right, let me calm down a little bit, get a little hype. Let's see what folks are talking about. That's like having one Black person on a panel about anti-Blackness. Yes, good point, Jendelle Crutch. A Pretty Mind says, when I was little, I came home one day and asked my mom why her and my brother were white and I was Black. My mom, who was light-skinned, then told me she was Black too. Yeah, these conversations. So a lot of people don't realize that kids notice these things at really young ages. And so parents think, they have, till their teenage years to talk about color and race. But kids will see the color very early. So I think parents have to start talking about it early. A Pretty Mind, but I didn't know because that's how different we were treated by society. Oh, wow. Yeah, A Pretty Mind. So yeah, my mom and my sister were light skinned too. And I talked about how it was obvious to me, like one of the reasons colorism was so obvious was because I had like a sister who was only 3 years older than me. And so I could see very clearly that people were not treating us the same way, right? So I knew that colorism was a thing. Jendelle Crush says, and it's not just a feeling. Most times they are most qualified. Incompetent Karens. Oh, yes. Does colorism affect men as much as it affects women? That's a great question, Knit Stitches and Blocks. So I say it doesn't affect men as much. It definitely affects men, but it doesn't affect them as much because patriarchy and misogyny sort of protect men from feeling the full blow of colorism. And I did a whole live video on this too. So if you want, I can send you the link to that where I talk about the differences between men and women with colorism. But because dark skin is considered a positive trait for men in some ways in terms of like strength and masculinity, it's seen as a masculine trait. Dark skin is seen as a masculine trait. So for women, that's considered a negative in our culture, and for men, that's considered a positive in our culture. But dark skin is also seen as less intelligent, so that affects men. Dark skinned people are also seen as, less sophisticated or less moral, right? More likely to be criminal. So we see dark-skinned men experiencing things in the justice system, experiencing discrimination in terms of like their intelligence and things like that. But on Twitter, I was looking at a picture of Golden Globe nominations, and they had 2 women and 3 men. The 2 women were both light-skinned, and the 3 men were very, very dark-skinned. And so I see dark-skinned men and light-skinned men in general, just men in general, having an easier time navigating through society because they are more judged on things like money and, again, like bravado and, things that are associated with success in other ways, whereas women are more harshly judged on our appearance across the board. I am Shanda Rule. For those of us who overcompensate and probably also feel like imposters, that is encouraging to hear. Oh, yes, honey, yes. You don't ever have to feel like an imposter, because trust me, if you got as far as you did, like you have overcome way more, and like they weren't gonna let you in if you weren't qualified. Trust me, white people and sometimes black people and other people of color, they will look for the smallest excuse not to hire us. They will look for the smallest imperfection not to give us the opportunity or to give us the job. So trust me when I say, if you got it, they couldn't find anything on you. It's just like, my daughter does. I'm gonna need these Tuesday talks to be longer. I know, huh? Because I am at the end. Well, no, I want to talk about solutions. Solutions doesn't mean like we wake up tomorrow and this is over with, but like how we start getting there. So I'm almost done, but not quite. Hey, Miss Ashley B. Hey, Sarah, what are you talking about today, friend? I'm talking about when dark-skinned people internalize colorism. Oh, Jindel answered. Hi, Lorisha, can you speak on very blatant colorism that is prevalent now on, say, Netflix and commercials? So I'm not sure. I don't have Netflix, and I don't plan on getting it anytime soon. I heard about Bridgerton, and I saw like ads and stuff for Bridgerton, and I was like, come on, Shonda Rhimes, like we need you on our team, But okay, anyway. But I think in the media in general, and now I realize it might be Iha Delarisha. I think in terms of the media in general, the blatant colorism can be on any platform. So it can be in the media created by white people. It can be in media created by people of color or black people, right? And it becomes even more blatant, I think, in a couple of ways. One, when you don't see any dark-skinned people, right? So like if there's a cast like Empire, for example, people talked about how Empire, like the whole family was just all, really light-skinned. But I think it's also obvious when there is a dark-skinned person and you can clearly see that they are like the clown in the show, or that they are the overt enemy, like the enemy on the show. And so I think Empire, if I'm using that as an example, there was Cookie's assistant. I thought she was had so much potential as a character on the show, but they really made her seem ignorant and dumb and unintelligent, right? And it was such a stark contrast. She, as like one of the only dark-skinned people on the show, everybody else is light-skinned, and she's the character that people, make fun of for being unintelligent, right? So that's some like examples of how I see it be really blatant. Let me catch up with these Facebook comments because, Instagram, y'all be on fire. Rosa Robinson. Hi, Rosa. Melody Hobson. Anyone? No, I'm not familiar with Melody Hobson. Vincent says, Shonda been trying my nerves with that, particularly with Bridgerton, child, because Lee Daniels is trash. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of Lee Daniels. Apologies to anyone who is. A Pretty Mind says, yes, it was like that with the Hamilton play. See, I haven't seen Hamilton. But I believe it, y'all. Like, you don't have to, like, you can name any specific media, movie, commercial performance thing. And I'm just going to be like, yep, that one too. Because I just know. Like, what's really surprising is when you show me a show or a commercial or a TV or a magazine that's doing it well, that's not colorist, that has interesting dynamic roles for dark-skinned women in particular. Like, that's when I'm shocked. Like, okay, so what do we do about this, y'all? What do we say? For all of you who have had experiences with internalized colorism or with needing to compensate or seeing disproportionate praise of light-skinned or biracial children, what would you say can be done about it? Or what have you done about it? My first question for any dark-skinned people in particular who might be dealing with internalized colorism is the question by Toni K. Bambara from the Salt Eaters, where she asks, are you sure you want to be well? And the reason why I'm asking that question, are you sure you want to be well, is because as dark-skinned people, we have to want to divest from the anti-blackness. We have to want to let go of those narratives. And I've seen it, I've witnessed it. A lot of dark-skinned people want to hold on to that. As detrimental as it is to them, as detrimental as it has been to their psyche, they still gain something from holding on to that narrative. I think it's a coping mechanism. My earrings are loud, I apologize. Or a way for them to sort of suppress any hurt or pain or wounding, right? It's almost like if they give up that belief, then they actually have to work on their own healing. And that's almost like too much for them. So they'd rather just continue believing that lighter eyes are better or that looser curl patterns are better. And so for my dark-skinned brothers and sisters out there, you have to want it. And Colorism Healing, Dr. Webb is not here to convince people to change. I'm here to help people who want to change. There is a difference, okay? Vincent says, I love it for the music and acting, but the lack of dark-skinned characters on Hamilton. Yes. This looks like an interesting comment. I am light-skinned black woman. My mom was dark brown skin. Dad from mixed blood black family. I never see commercials with black men that look like my father and mom. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I have. Again, I don't have a TV either. So not only do I not have Netflix, but I don't have a TV either. So I see YouTube commercials most often because I'm usually like watching YouTube videos of anything. But it's disheartening. I remember growing up when I used to sit in front of the TV, I used to eat in front of the TV, do homework in front of the TV. I felt that, like not seeing representation in commercials. Especially like young girls, like kids, like little girls. Anyway, let me keep going. I had to educate the F out of myself on what the issue was. Good. So A Pretty Mind on Instagram is saying that one solution that worked in their situation was educating yourself, like digging in, like not just staying on the surface with your knowledge, but like really peeling back the layers of what's going on, right? And so educate is in all caps, like don't just read the books that are assigned in class unless you have a really dope professor, then that's cool. But you have to do like the research that mainstream culture doesn't want you to see. So I appreciate that. I love that advice. Jandel Crutch says, intentionally feed ourselves info and images that reflect the dynamism of dark-skinned folks. Oh, come on, say it. So that goes to that media diet, right? Like intentionally feeding ourselves, nourishing ourselves with portrayals of dark-skinned people who are dynamic, who are qualified, who are beautiful and full, authentic, complex beings, right? Their total humanity is on display. And not just media representations too. We need to surround ourselves with other dark-skinned people who love themselves. And I'm speaking to dark-skinned people who want to heal from colorism. Find other dark-skinned friends who are also healing or, have gone through some healing process. Surround yourself with other dark-skinned people who love being dark-skinned, who love their black features and their, natural hair, and who will affirm you, who will help to show you that you don't have to try hard in this space. Like, we know you the bomb. We know you the ish, as they like to say. And I think that is something that we lack too. I think a lot of the dark-skinned people who have internalized colorism and who have not been able to change the narrative about themselves and about other dark-skinned people don't have that support. Don't have a community or a network of other dark-skinned people who are in love with themselves and in love with each other. So yes, a pretty mind. Once I realized I was dealing with brainwashing, great term, and realized I can't compete with that, I had compassion because people are hurting themselves with their mindset like this. Yes, so compassion is the key. So not judgment, right? We're not on here saying, we're not laughing at the people who have internalized colorism, right? We're here to say, this is the red pill and this is the blue pill. Neo. And you can choose to go on with the illusion of white supremacy, because it is an illusion. It's not a fact. You can continue to go on with the illusion of white supremacy, or you can choose to start to discover the lies for yourself. And if you're willing to go down that rabbit hole, I am personally here to support you. And I know a lot of the people watching this will also support you and cheer you on in that fight. Okay. I feel sorry for people. I'm bomb AF as a person, and many people will miss out on me due to prejudice. That's on them. A pretty man. See, you're going to have to come on these lives all the time with these comments. I'm loving this. Iha Delarisha was never raised by my parents to disparage black folks of any shade. It took me years to realize the colorism that I saw darker skinned relatives be subjected to, along with friends. Okay, so I think that's an interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that. So what I hear you saying, and always feel free to correct me if I'm summarizing incorrectly, is that because your household was accepting and you were not programmed with those things, it took a while to see the systemic or the contextual colorism that existed outside of your immediate circle, right? And I think that's an important realization to have, because as much as you might love your darker skinned relatives and as much as you might love your darker skinned friends, you can love them that much more effectively by understanding what they face in the external world, right? By understanding the issues that they might be up against, right? So even if you are not there in terms of being the one discriminating or having prejudiced attitudes toward them, it's good that if they know that you understand them, that you see them. Because I know a lot of dark-skinned people say they feel like they can't talk to their friends about it. They don't feel like they have anyone they can talk to. I was once one of those dark-skinned people. So to anyone who cares about a dark-skinned person or who loves a dark-skinned person, make sure that they know you listen and that you will believe them and that you will not gaslight them or be dismissive, right? I think more dark-skinned people need to know who they can talk to, that they have people to talk to, you know? Delusion. Hey, Michelle. Speak the truth. Iha Delarisha. White supremacy delusion. Oh, yeah. White supremacy is a delusion. Ignore the trolls. Oh, are there trolls on here? I don't know. Okay. So I love the suggestions you all gave. And on top of, once you accept the challenge to heal, once you accept the challenge to be well, because it is challenging, it's, it's that colonization is not going to go away without a fight. It's going to put up a fight. It's like detoxing. It's like kicking a drug habit, right? Your subconscious mind is going to say, hey, no, we know white supremacy. We know colorism. That feels safe. We know what to expect there, right? And we know the rules in that system. So it's not going down without a fight. We have to be ready for it. But I also think being willing to divest, because we might perceive some benefit to buying into the system even as dark-skinned people. So here's what I mean by that. If we accept colorism, the hierarchy that colorism gives us, one thing I see is dark-skinned people who sort of align themselves or ally themselves with lighter-skinned people. And it's almost the assumption that I will, by virtue of proximity, I will benefit from their privilege, right? I want the light-skinned popular kids in school to know me, to see me, and to choose me, right? And so instead of rejecting that hierarchy, I'm going to buy into it, and I'm going to position myself as the best friend of the popular light-skinned person, or as someone who's going to look a certain way or present a certain way, because yes, even though I'm dark skinned, I can't afford to not have long straight hair. I can't afford not to have blue contacts because I need that extra leverage. Buying into that system gives me extra leverage in the system, right? And so, yeah, you do have to give up some of that. You have to give up some of that perceived leverage, some of that assumed so-called leverage in the system in order to heal from it, right? So we have to be willing to say, I'm not going to play the game, my dark-skinned folks. A lot of times we're like, well, this is the game we're in and I'm just trying to win. But you could also refuse to not play the game. And that presents itself with a different set of challenges, right? I'm not going to say that things are sunshine and rainbows if you choose not to play the game. And then the unlearning and relearning. So I agree that you have to feed the input. I have a music playlist that I call input. So you have to be willing to radically shift the input that you're receiving about yourself and that you're receiving about dark skin. So again, that goes with the media you're consuming. That also goes with the educational content you're consuming. And that is very, very much tied to the people you surround yourself around. Like that might take more time to sort of dissolve relationships that contributed to your internalized colorism, and to find and seek out new relationships that are healthier and more affirming of darker skin. But I think that kind of input is crucial in being able to heal from that and let go of some of that programming. And it takes practice, right? Okay, so that's all I have. This is one of my longer ones this year. We're almost at 50 minutes. One of the hardest parts for me when it comes to colorism is that it's so shameful. Black people will not openly admit to being colorist, and they will gaslight you when it comes to your experience. Yeah, people don't want to admit to being invested in the system. Yeah, and that's why I see even dark-skinned people who don't want to talk about it. There will be dark-skinned women who insist that they never experienced colorism, and that I, as a dark-skinned woman, or anyone, just needs to love ourselves, right? And I know that any dark-skinned person who denies that colorism is a real thing, it's coming from a place of internalized colorism. They bought into the system, and so they don't want to step outside of that matrix that they've accepted. I think I missed a comment. Iha Delarisha, I saw how my light-skinned relatives were treated. I loved my mother and dark-skinned relatives even more. Oh, yeah. I was able as a young adult to challenge Black folks who said colorist things to me. Way to go. Way to go for you to have the gumption at such an early age. Yes. That's why forums like this are important, because people are suffering alone 100% and they need tools. I am Shanda Rule. People responding to a pretty mind, saying yes, and also the shame that people who experience it hold. It's hard. Yes. I've talked to like one-on-one clients who said part of the fear of divesting from the system is having to face the shame that you feel knowing that you once invested in it, right? And they feel shame around the fact that, I feel ashamed that I ever felt that way. I feel ashamed that I ever tried to light my skin. I feel ashamed that I mistreated dark-skinned people, even though I am a dark-skinned person. I feel ashamed that I ever thought that way to begin with. That's a real thing. I think admitting feelings of shame is the gateway out of shame. Right? I think that is the first step in the right direction, is simply admitting that you've had that feeling. Like anything, the silence or trying to suppress the truth of it is going to exacerbate the problem. But, I'm coming back every week. I'm going to be here every week. So, and then of course, in between weeks, I'm on the internet all the time. Anyone who wants to continue that work, you know where to find me. I love talking to y'all every week live. If you decide to try out the Patreon membership, we do a monthly Zoom call, which is pretty cool, because then you can talk back to me in real time and I can see your faces, which would be really fun. I'm also thinking about doing a summer school thing over the summer, like having a Sarah's summer school where we do Zoom workshops with folks. I'm so excited. I have lots of ideas. Iha Delarisha says, do you think Meghan Markle, Harry Windsor is a moniker of your topic here? Not defending abuse of her by British media. I note online many sisters have big feelings for her. More to the story. I'm not sure if I have enough context to be able to fully answer that. So are you saying you think Meghan Markle is experiencing internalized colorism, or do you think people love her so much because they have internalized colorism? And I think that both of those things could be true, actually. M. Narlee says, and representation absolutely matter. Media portrayals absolutely matter. Thank you for saying that. Thank you. Such an important convo. Thank you so much. You are brilliant. Thank you. You are brilliant too, all of you. I have my first guest coming up next week. I have a couple of guests who said they are willing to come on and talk. So I'll continue to be, scouting folks throughout the next several weeks throughout the year to have live conversations with people. I'm really excited to talk live on video with some of the folks that I've had pretty good internet relationships with, but haven't had live dialogue. So I'm excited about that. Okay, now I'm just hanging out at this point, so I'm gonna log off. Love y'all so much. Take care and be easy. Till next time. Bye. Mwah.